Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is Renegade Operative here, coming at you with a vastly different review format. As you guys are well aware by now, my channel has been rebranded into doing more gaming related content for quite some time now. What people didn't know, however, is that I was an avid Dragon Ball Z fan, and I talked extensively about the pros and cons of the series as time progressed on Twitter, if you haven't noticed. Now, I extensively viewed Dragon Ball Super, the Future Trunks arc, and I figured now is a good time to review this latest arc. So as we begin with the story element, I would recommend grabbing some fucking popcorn because it's going to be long. Let's begin with the plot of the Future Trunks arc. It starts off once again in the post-apocalyptic world of the future timeline. Bulma is once again helping her son with preparations as they scavenge enough fuel for the time machine, which will allow her son to make a one-way trip back to the past to warn about a particular greater threat going on right now in Trunks' timeline. This threat has apparently grown so much power that even Trunks himself isn't able to stop him. He's the only capable Z fighter that's still alive in his timeline, so try not to forget that. We also run into Mai, who is the current leader in the future of the human resistance. After a brief moment of talking in Bulma's base, her base of operations is immediately attacked by a shadowy figure who immediately shows how dire the situation is to Trunks by tearing through future Bulma like a wet paper bag, killing her in the very first episode. The shadowy figure emerges as a tanned black outfit variation of Goku, leaving the viewers in awe and mystery as to who he is. Later, he dubs himself as Son Goku by name, adding further mysterious nature as to who he could be. Eventually, an injured Trunks escapes to the past, with Mai assumed dead, although Black manages to make a way to the past, where an ensuing fight occurs with him and Goku of the current timeline. It ends in a draw, and further discoveries and more problems start stacking up. Black eventually destroys the time machine, and that ends Trunks' method of going back home temporarily, and it's revealed that pain makes Black stronger. This is where the action takes a grinding halt, a short backseat to some plot exposition, and you really get to see how the current timeline differs to Trunks in his eyes compared to his timeline, which is a dystopian mess. There's a bit of downtime as Black is dragged back into the future from a time rip. This gives Trunks some time to train with Vegeta, reminisce with Gohan, and actually the plot gets some very touching moments with future Trunks being back in the present. A prime example is when little Trunks knocks some sense into his future self when all hope seems lost to the latter. After these segments culminate, the story begins going through a weird spiraling event of time travel and ultimately some hard to follow segments, which makes the Toei timeline explanation handy, but I'll explain that later. Within the story, we learn a little bit more about a Shinjin named Zamasu, who is the apprentice of the Supreme Kai in Universe 10, Gawasu. Interestingly enough, we learn the backstory of Zamasu, who slowly but surely starts to berate any form of humanity and species, questioning Gawasu's methods and claiming these mortal beings are inferior to gods. There's a divergent path of timelines here, the future Trunks timeline, the present timeline, and the Goku Black timeline, that are present after more of Zamasu's events. An ultimate turn to more of an antagonistic role is revealed. First, we begin with a little tidbit of future Trunks killing Deborah and stopping Majin Buu from ever being hatched. As far as the manga goes, the Supreme Kai and Kibito are killed within this battle. This means that Beerus is also dead in the future timeline, if the Supreme Kai is also deceased. At this point, this is where Trunks becomes a Super Saiyan 2. Present Beerus killing present Zamasu eventually divided the timelines into two between the future Trunks and the present timeline. Goku Black now has his own timeline, diverged from the present, where Zamasu is actually successful at murdering Gawasu under everyone's nose. This allows Zamasu to travel 1 year into the future. From here, he uses the Super Dragon Balls to swap bodies with Goku 1 year into the present timeline and wipes out Goku and Zamasu's old body along with Chi-Chi and Goten. Now we have a series of events in the Black Goku timeline which changes history as Zamasu in a new body begins using the time ring to travel to the future to future Trunks' timeline and murders Gawasu right again before future Zamasu. He then pledges an alliance, and then future Zamasu makes the wish with the Super Dragon Balls to become immortal while all the other gods are wiped out by Black. Phew, now let's take a break and, you have some time to digest all that timeline craziness that was summed up in about 2 paragraphs or less. That was fucking confusing as hell to follow now, wasn't it? Anyway, from here, things carry on as usual with Goku, Trunks, and Vegeta in the future timeline, as the ultimate battle with Black and future Zamasu begins to shape and determine the fate of the universe. For what it's worth, I do thoroughly enjoy the build-up of the villains throughout the show with Black and future Zamasu. However, I do think some of the blow was softened with finding out the revelation that present Zamasu was actually Black and that the time ring did not prevent him from being erased from existence after Beerus caught on for the sake of plot convenience. Yet, that didn't stop the show from having plentiful moments to enjoy from a story perspective. There are a few things I still liked about this arc. Number one is that Trunks was more humanized with Mai. It felt like there was actual stakes involved, with Zamasu achieving an almost godlike state via the Potara fusion. And then episode 66 came out to some much-deserved mixed reception. Now I know, in my personal opinion, I do feel this episode dropped the ball a little bit. I can slightly let the Potara retcon go after it was pretty obvious that Z stated that a fusion user is supposed to be permanent, but Goku and Vegeta still defuse within Buu inside the Buu arc. The excuse was made right after the fact that it had to do with fumes or magic inside Buu, so diffusing with the Potara earrings on still existed even back then. The excuse now is that they have way too much power output, which shortened the length of the Potara fusion. In all actuality, we only got a few minutes to enjoy Vegito, the cocky bastard who was virtually unchanged from the Buu arc rendition. I did enjoy his appearance, however, as much as it was true to form, it was also a overglorified cock tease that ended too soon. I can see why the anticlimactic battle between Vegito and Fusion Zamasu generated so much controversy in one episode, giving us only 8 minutes of Vegito to making Trunks a definitive Gary Stu who was just ridiculously overpowered by Earth's inhabitants. Not that many people are even alive in this timeline to make a spirit bomb, so how is this possible? To make matters worse, oh, I'm not even done. This gets crazier, so Trunks gets into the Genki Dama, the spirit bomb. He absorbs it. This gives enough output to make a giant fucking energy sword that Trunks uses to cut through Zamasu faster than a katana through a Philly cheesesteak, bro. A mulberry is a fucking tree and Trunks is a man. This nigga went full Yu Yu Hakusho Kuwabara spirit sword on our ass. And we're just supposed to sit here and sort of accept it. No, I think it was bad writing to push Trunks like this. Again, you're under the impression that Trunks is not as strong as the gods, because again, even though he attained this new form, he was not strong enough to conquer Black or Zamasu in the previous episodes. So this seems like a big Deus Ex Machina. Let's make Trunks stronger, let's give him the final victory, and let's give like Vegito only 8 minutes of screen time. It's bullcrap, it's bad writing. It just seems like they wanted to finish the story with the best ideas, but not the brightest execution. The ending consists of Zamasu's essence making one last return to haunt Trunks and the rest of the Z fighters after defeating him. All attacks prove useless as Zamasu's essence starts to engulf the future Earth and seemingly kills all the life forms around it except for the current Z fighters. Despite the fact that all hope definitely seems lost here, Goku finds one last trump card in summoning the Omni King by pressing the button in his pocket, which summons the future Zeno to the future timeline. Eventually, Goku asks Zeno if he can undo the damage and take care of Zamasu, which leads back to the future Zamasu being destroyed in the process of the Earth being blown up as well as the others narrowly escape. So, at this point, future Earth is pretty much toast by Zeno, and there's a few weird moments that reside within this episode. So, Zamasu's S's being able to appear even in the current timeline is something that I found absolutely strange. And after everyone goes back to the past, Whis tells Trunks that he could undo the damage of future Earth being destroyed by going back to a point in time where the Supreme Kai and Kibito aren't dead, so he'll leave Zamasu's fate in the hands of future Beerus. Now, this point is where people might get really confused, but bear with me. If you want my take, I think that Zeno did blow up the future Trunks timeline, and I think that he also blew up the future Earth as well, so everything in the future universe is currently destroyed. Now, Goku did go back and he did get Zeno, and he took him to his other playmate, which is present Zeno. So I think that the future timeline still exists in some way where you can go to it, and I think what might happen is that Whis is going to come in and he's going to turn back time to the point where the Kais and presumably Beerus is going to be still alive, because the Supreme Kai is tied to Beerus. If the Supreme Kai dies, Beerus dies, so Beerus is going to be back in the future timeline if he does a rewind. For the sake of convenience, let's forget about the Goku Black timeline. Let's focus on the future one. If future Beerus kills future Zamasu at this point, then future Zamasu doesn't gain the ability to use the Super Dragon Balls to become immortal. Since present Zamasu is also dead, present Zamasu cannot become black due to that same event. So I think a little bit of a casual loop is happening right now, and I think that Goku Black is never going to be created because of Beerus' actions in the present as well, which is what Whis joked about, he grilled the shit about, and I think that future Zamasu won't have that drive to become evil as well without present Zamasu in Goku's body. So that's just my theory, take it how you want to take it. In the end, I think both Zamasus are going to be wiped out if Beerus still exists, if Trunks tells him what's going on. If Whis tells him what's going on, then I think future Zamasu and present Zamasu has been wiped out by Beerus in both timelines, the present and the future. Let's once again forget about the Goku Black timeline for now, but I'm pretty sure that the same thing can probably occur if the Supreme Kai is not dead. Now, the only thing about this part is that no one knows where Trunks is going in a time machine. Presumably, they're going to the future reformed after Whis does his business there. Anyway, Whis tells Trunks and Mai that there will be two versions of themselves when they go back to either the future timeline reformed or maybe the Goku Black timeline, which Mai just accepts. This might possibly mean that whatever timeline Trunks goes back to, it'll be looking a hell of a lot more safer, considering the fact that there will be two versions of him to protect the future, whatever timeline he picks, as well as the Kai still being alive. Eventually, present Gohan gives future Trunks a final heartfelt goodbye as he harkens back to thinking about his master Gohan who died due to the androids, and the series ends off in a close from there. I mean, as much as you think about it, poor Deborah, man, there's going to be two versions of Trunks just lying around, so a lot of people are going to get fucking bodied. No questions asked there, bro. This timeline won't be having any issues for a while, no matter what is happening, so I think that is the point to be made here, from what I can tell. Future Trunks is going to be A-okay. After all, as they say, the more the merrier, and I think that the idea itself, while strange, is awesome. The animation here is incredible. It doesn't matter how many people pause for screen caps to point out similar issues that exist in Z with the bad animation. The animation and art is a leg up from the most embarrassing moments in the Resurrection F and Battle of Gods saga. It's not perfect by any means, however, the increased amount of speed put into the fight sequences does add a bit of a larger than life experience to gods and mortals clashing close fists against each other. The episodes you should definitely take a gander at is episode 50, 57, and 66. These episodes are completely mental with how good everything appears to be in terms of fast-paced animations, and this gives DBZ Fight Junkies just a little bit more bang for their buck. The only problem is a bit of a technical one, and that's the fights not being as long as they used to be from DBZ for the sake of Super still trying to clean up the pacing. Even though Super tried to clean up these long sequences of filler in the series that attributed to some of the sagas and the old DBZ, even though they tried to clean up the fact that there was these long-winded bouts of screaming that really just was taxing on the actors, even though they tried to clean up the fact that the pacing is not as it used to be, so the show is arguably shorter than the Dragon Ball Z episodes. This problem of the fights not being long still is a detriment, even though they tried to fix all these problems. And sadly, this carries into the future Trunks arc as well. The transformations were definitely a lot more plentiful this time around than the Universe 6 arc, which is still refreshing to see considering there's a lot of them this time around. We can clearly say that despite how eccentric or fabulous Goku Black's behavior was after going Rose, that Super Saiyan Rose transformation will probably stick with me the most out of this arc. It's just because it screamed as an evil variant of the Super Saiyan Blue God form, and I was kind of waiting to see that when it was first introduced to the series. Only Goku Black in Super Saiyan Rose form with pink hair can still remain a badass after stabbing Vegeta in the chest with a psionic blade. Super Trunks was a cool visual. It reminded me once again of a smaller Broly, as I'm sure he did with everyone else, but ultimately he was underutilized once again when it was made clear that he stood no chance against Black and future Zamasu. Vegito follows the same fate, except they nailed his character down to the wire, and Fusion Zamasu was just crazy. He was crazy, yet a unique combination, especially with his moveset. The Light of Justice, the Blaze of Judgment, the Lightning of Absolution. It almost reminded me of an absurd string of moves that you could pull off in a power fantasy video game. It's something that I like to see more out of. Usually you don't get the overtly mystical movesets when it comes to DBZ, except for the occasional big attack and beam struggle. There's definitely some defining moments to be had here. No one will probably forget all these transformations and events in the future Trunks saga. So much comes to mind, like the father-son Gallic Gun, Trunks' final flash, Goku actually getting pissed that Chi-Chi and Goten is killed in another timeline, so he goes on a rage bender. Goku and Vegeta actually losing to Black and Zamasu, and seeing Vegeta once more. A lot of what I said keeps you on edge, even though the climax is a drunken, stumbling endeavor at the end. For the sound design and voice acting, I'll touch up on this section just a little bit. It wasn't too bad per se. Of course, there's the typical sound effects that you come to expect from DBZ lore, such as familiar key blasts, charge-ups, and punch effects that give your ears this nostalgic feeling on playback. The cast was also great so far as the Japanese crew goes, and Black is deceptively calm from what Nozawa had to work with. This threw a lot of Westerners off like myself before I realized it was just Goku's voice actor who made Black less exuberant than Goku, which is a good thing in my eyes. As a bit of a side note, it's pretty obvious here that Zamasu's voice actor needs a little bit more praise than he deserves. It's a bit of flawless casting as far as the villain goes, and he has such a wide range of emotions that certainly nailed in Dragon Ball Super on the behalf of the Japanese actor Shinichiro Miki. My only gripes with some of the lines is that as far as the subs go, they're highly over-exaggerated and downright goofy when it comes to Zamasu's cockiness. I just think that it's treading on thin ice before the plunge into hokey and hammy waters of dialogue entirely. The American team has a lot to work with to convince us over at Funimation. The soundtracks are mostly the same flair with newer themes supplementing the older tracks used in previous episodes of Super. If it's not broke, then don't fix it. Overall, the future Trunks saga has something for everyone. It has the elements that a Dragon Ball fan would want. It has mysterious intrigue into the villain, a supplemental backstory for him, fights galore, and incredible animation, and plenty of touching and comedic moments in this overall hopeless story thread. What keeps it from greatness is the parts that drag the story on, like going back to the past constantly, not being long enough, especially in certain sequences where Vegito could have been fleshed out, the time travel confusion, and the myriad of concerns that comes with episode 66 that are sure to get the fans talking. Zamasu was a serviceable foil to the Saiyans, as well as going against the very nature of the Kai's duties to watch over civilization, and ultimately realizing that he accepted his own mortality with the dangers of fusing with Goku Black in order to become a god. He cited that he needed more power to cleanse the mistakes of the gods, even if that power came from a mortal's body. This made for an amusing character even though he wasn't truly thought-provoking. At least his backstory made sense in the end for his rebellious nature. I think this arc is something where all fans can enjoy, either if you're a casual fan of Super, or if you're a hardcore DBZ fan. Just expect this arc to have a few bumps in the road along the journey. I still think this arc will probably go down as one of Super's finest, and I give the Future Trunks arc a solid 8 out of 10. This is Renegade Operative signing off. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this extensive review of the Dragon Ball Super Future Trunks arc, and remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more anime and gaming content as well as reviews. Oh, wait, you motherfuckers still here? Well, this is the end portion of the video where I wanted to put the timeline explanation for Dragon Ball Super. The reason why I didn't put the Future Trunks arc timeline explanation from Toei in the middle of the video is because I thought it would be a weird break of me talking to me explaining how this content works without me talking and showing how the timeline looks. So I decided to put this at the end of the video so you guys could see it. So once again, this is me really signing off actually. Enjoy this timeline explanation from Toei. Pause the video if you have to see any references or any points where you probably missed in the story how the timeline worked in the Future Trunks saga. I will see you guys next time. Look forward to my next videos. See you later.